They thought Christmas Eve would be quiet. That was the lie command told themselves, the lie they told the politicians, and the lie they fed the families back home who believed their sons would be safe for just one night. The desert did not care that it was Christmas. The enemy did not care either. The wind cut through the valley like a blade, carrying dust, ash, and the smell of burned metal. 11 Navy SEALs were pinned down in a region that officially did not exist, on a mission that officially never happened. Their extraction window had closed. The helicopters turned away. Orders were clear. No re-entry. No second attempt. Leave them behind. The SEALs had been inserted 3 nights earlier to capture a high-value target tied to a growing network that had already taken American lives. The intelligence was shaky, rushed through command because higher-ups wanted results before the holiday. What they didn't expect was betrayal. The moment the team reached the compound, gunfire erupted from every direction. Someone had tipped off the enemy. The SEALs fought their way out, but not without cost. Ammo was low. One man was wounded badly. Communications were unstable. When they finally reached the extraction zone, the sky was already turning against them. The pilots circled once, twice. Then command intervened. Surface-to-air threats had been detected. Risk assessment escalated. The call came down cold and final. Abort. The birds pulled away, fading into the dark sky, leaving 11 shadows on the ground watching their only way home disappear. Silence followed, the kind that feels louder than gunfire. No one panicked. SEALs don't. They went to ground, moving into defensive positions they had rehearsed 1,000 times. But this was different. It was Christmas Eve. Morale mattered, even to warriors trained to suppress it. Somewhere far away, families were gathering, kids were opening presents, and lights were glowing in warm houses. Out here, the temperature dropped fast, and the enemy was closing in. Back at the forward operating base, one man stood staring at the live feed replay, jaw tight, fists clenched. Staff Sergeant Daniel Cross, an Army Special Operations soldier attached to Joint Command, had watched the mission unfold in real time. He had trained with SEALs, bled with them, buried some of them. When the order came down to abandon the team, he felt something snap inside him. Command told him it was impossible. Too risky. Not worth escalating losses. Assets unavailable. Weather deteriorating. Political consequences severe. Daniel listened, nodded, and walked out. Then he did something no one expected. He went to the hangar. Daniel was not a SEAL. He wasn't even supposed to be involved anymore. But he knew the terrain, knew the enemy patterns, and more importantly, he knew the men left behind. He grabbed a small team, soldiers who didn't ask questions because they already knew the answer. They armed up quietly. No announcements, no permission, just intent. Before moving out, Daniel paused and looked at a small photo taped inside his vest. His daughter, 5 years old, smiling in front of a Christmas tree. He whispered a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. Then he turned toward the darkness. If stories like this matter to you, if you respect the courage and sacrifice of warriors who are rarely acknowledged, take a moment to subscribe to Bravo Warrior Stories. This channel exists to honor those moments the world never sees. The journey back to the extraction zone was a calculated gamble. Daniel's team moved through narrow valleys and abandoned villages, avoiding main routes, using moonlight and instinct. Every step carried the risk of ambush. They intercepted enemy chatter confirming what Daniel already feared. The SEALs had been located. A coordinated assault was planned for dawn. They had hours, maybe less. When Daniel finally made contact, it was through a broken transmission filled with static. A familiar voice cut through, calm but strained. The SEAL team leader acknowledged Daniel's presence without surprise, as if he had expected this defiance. There were no thanks, no emotion, just facts, positions, wounds, enemy movement. The plan formed fast, too fast for comfort. Daniel would create a diversion large enough to pull enemy forces away from the SEALs, hide sight. The SEALs would move to an alternate extraction point several kilometers east, one that command had already deemed unusable. It was the only option. Gunfire erupted before the plan fully unfolded. The enemy moved sooner than expected. The night exploded into chaos. Tracers ripped through the air. Explosions shook the ground. Daniel's team engaged hard, drawing fire, making themselves a target on purpose. It worked. The enemy shifted focus. The SEALs moved. One carried the wounded man over his shoulder without complaint. Another fired short, controlled bursts, conserving ammo like his life depended on it, because it did. They moved as one unit, silent, disciplined, relentless. Every man knew that slowing down meant death for all of them. Daniel was hit during the diversion. Shrapnel tore into his leg, dropping him to one knee. He gritted his teeth, returned fire, and refused evacuation. Pain was irrelevant. Time was everything. As dawn approached, the sky lightened just enough to betray silhouettes. The alternate extraction zone came into view. It was worse than expected. Uneven ground, limited cover, and no helicopters in sight. Command still refused. They repeated the order. Stand down. Withdraw. Daniel ignored it. Then, against protocol, against orders, against logic, a single helicopter appeared on the horizon. One pilot, one bird. He had heard the radio chatter. He knew what was happening. And he made his choice. The extraction was brutal. The helicopter took fire immediately. The pilot held steady. The SEALs loaded fast, covering each other with practiced efficiency. Daniel limped toward the bird last, refusing help. As he reached the ramp, enemy fire intensified. A round struck the tail rotor. The helicopter lurched. For a moment, it felt like it would all end there. Then they lifted off. The helicopter vanished into the pale morning sky, scarred, leaking fuel, but airborne. Behind them, the battlefield faded into dust and smoke. All 11 SEALs were alive. Back at base, the reaction was mixed. Relief, anger, silence. Official reports would later describe the event as a miscommunication. No medals were awarded publicly. Daniel received a quiet reprimand and an early transfer. The pilot returned to duty without recognition. The SEALs went home for Christmas, carrying a debt they would never forget. Years later, Daniel would receive a message on Christmas Eve. No sender name, just a photo. 11 men standing together, older, scarred, alive, with a simple caption. "You brought us home." Stories like this don't make headlines. They live in shadows, passed quietly among those who understand what loyalty truly costs. If you believe these stories deserve to be told, subscribe now to Bravo Warrior Stories, where courage is remembered, sacrifice is honored, and the truth is never abandoned.